What's going on, guys? Welcome to another Doctor Who classic review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 4th Doctor Tom Baker story, The Hand of Fear. This is a big story from season 14 because it is Sarah Jane's final story. Final story of her as kind of the main companion. So it's a pretty big story in that regard. It comes close to the start of season 14, because after this the Doctor goes to Gallifrey on his own, and then after that Leela becomes his new companion. So it's a big story because it is, the end, the main end, I suppose, for probably the biggest companion of the classic series, if not of all of Doctor Who so far. I have actually seen this one before a couple of times a few years ago, but I couldn't remember a whole lot, little bits here and there. So I was interested to have a look at it again in a kind of analytical review mindset. This is The Hand of Fear by Bob Baker and Dave Martin. The Doctor and Sarah return to Earth, but are plunged into danger as soon as they step from the TARDIS. They arrive in a quarry rigged with explosives, and the blast leaves Sarah unconscious in the rubble, a fossilized stone hand in her grip. What strange power does the hand have over Sarah Jane? So quite a subtle, not a whole lot of information given there. I mean, that is literally the first 10-ish minutes of the story of the first episode. It's probably not even that is pretty much talking about. And it doesn't really give you a whole lot more. So let's just get straight into it with the cast. So Tom Baker as the 4th Doctor. Yeah, he's really good here. Obviously, he's still in his prime at this time, and no matter when he's always around Elizabeth Sladen, he's great. He's on top form. He's just doing some great stuff. Some fairly serious stuff with him in this story. Not a whole lot of comedy. This is a little bit more of a serious story. You can tell that he's genuinely, worried for Sarah once she, gets buried under the rubble, when she's in the hospital, and when he finds out that the hand's gone and she's also gone, and trying to track her down. You can tell that he's very worried about her, and it's just a great performance by Tom, as always. Really, he's pretty much always very, very good. And then Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith. Yeah, I mean, she shines in this episode. She's a big part of it, especially for the first part or two. Yeah, she does a really good job, being possessed. I think she's actually been possessed a couple of times in different stories. And yeah, she plays it really well. I mean, when she's doing the whole Eldrad must live thing, she almost sounds like childish, like Eldrad must live, and just the look on her face and everything. She looks really childish, but she plays it really well. And yeah, generally just great stuff by Elizabeth Sladen and Tom Baker in this one. Alright, so let's get on to the good and the bad, starting with the good. The Doctor lands the TARDIS in a quarry about to be exploded. So it's a pretty crazy start to the episode when the Doctor and Sarah literally step out of the TARDIS. I do find it a bit odd, as soon as they step out of the TARDIS, he knows he's in a quarry because he says, "We're in a quarry." He actually says that. And there's these alarms going off. But they don't seem to think much of it, and then just before the explosion, Sarah, I think she says, "Alarms, go, run out of the way." Then all of a sudden the alarms, they can hear the alarms, they know what's going to happen. I don't know, I thought instead of, I just find it a bit weird how they get out the TARDIS, there's an alarm, they're in a quarry, and they don't really twig on until literally 2 seconds before the explosion happens. Yeah, a little bit convenient for the story there, but I do think it's interesting, just an interesting place for them to land, like smack bang in the middle of a quarry that's about to be blown up. So yeah, just an interesting kind of start, I suppose. Sarah being possessed by the ring. Yeah, like I said before, Elizabeth Sladen does great with being possessed. She plays it very well. And I just like the whole concept of, she was in the rubble, she saw a hand, she went to go grab the hand, thinking it was the Doctor's hand or someone else to help her. But it turned out it was this, this hand, and it was literally just a hand, and somehow, she got the ring, and the ring went on her finger, and she became possessed by Eldrad. And I think it's an interesting little concept, to start the episode with. Radiation bringing the hand to life. So it was a bit random how she just, once Sarah was possessed and woke up from her, kind of coma, and when she was unconscious in the hospital, she went straight to the nuclear power station, the nuclear generator. At this time, we didn't really know that you know, radiation was going to be a thing with this. I think, you know, while she's making her way there, the Doctor's trying to figure things out. He's like, all right, this is the stone, this is what it's made of, blah, 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 looking at all this stuff. And then he figures out, he somehow figures out radiation. And, you know, when he's trying to figure out where Sarah's gone, they end up figuring out, all right, I reckon it's going to be the nuclear generator. But I like the whole thing where, you know, Sarah's sat in the radiation room, and she's just sat there with the hand, opens the box up, and she just sits there like a little child, just, Eldrad must live. And it's just, you can tell she's completely taken over, and she has no control over herself. And then, yeah, when the hand is in there and it starts moving, it's creepy. It's really creepy seeing a hand move, you know? It's some Addams Family stuff there. Yeah, very creepy stuff, and honestly, for the time, the CGI, I guess it wasn't really, I don't know what it was. Like, I don't think the hand was CGI, but obviously they didn't just have a hand that could move, so it was somehow CGI'd in there, I guess. Yeah, it was cool, it was interesting. Eldrad regenerates into a female, which is really interesting, because when we first kind of hear Eldrad's voice saying Eldrad must live in Sarah and that Doctor's ear, it sounds like a man. And then Eldrad, when she eventually, well, he/she eventually gets made into a full form, fully regenerates, turns out it's a woman, and kind of sounds like a woman, but has this very deep tone as well. But it's interesting, and I really like it, because the whole regeneration thing is interesting, because we're used to the Doctor, just regeneration is a thing that Time Lords do. So having a different character and a completely different species also having a regenerative ability, I think is actually really interesting. And the fact that this, you know, here did go from male to female, and then, you know, eventually we see right at the end, towards the end, we see her get destroyed and turned into the male version of Eldrad. It's really interesting, especially before we'd ever really seen that with Time Lords. You know, the Doctor hadn't changed into a woman at this point. As far as I know, we hadn't seen any other Time Lords change into any other any other gender, you know. I mean, we'd barely even seen Time Lords up to this point. Up until the next episode with the Deadly Assassin, we hadn't really seen Time Lords at all, to be honest, apart from the Master and the Time Meddler, the Meddling Monk. So yeah, it's really interesting seeing this Eldrad character regenerate, and especially into a different sex, different gender. Yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. Final thing for the good, the Doctor gets a call from Gallifrey and has to leave Sarah. So like I said at the start, this is Sarah Jane's final story for her kind of tenure as the companion. And yeah, I mean, it starts off with Sarah just getting a little bit annoyed at the Doctor, you know, like, oh, I'm always getting possessed and controlled, and there's all these things happening to me, all these aliens, and I feel like I'm not going to survive, and I just don't feel like this is a situation I want to be in. She gets angry because the Doctor isn't really listening, because he's trying to mess around with the TARDIS, and she ultimately just goes, fine, I'm packing my things and I'm going. But the Doctor hasn't, you know, once she's gone, she started packing her things. The Doctor's, he doesn't realise, because he wasn't really listening. And he's like, oh, well, what's going on here? But then while that's happening, he gets a kind of a call. You know how Time Lords can communicate via their brains or whatever. He gets a message from the Time Lords, and he has to go back to Gallifrey, and he's like, can't take Sarah with me. So ultimately she comes out with her bags all packed, and he's like, yeah, well, how did you know I've got to leave you behind? And then, you know, Sarah's like, because she was like, oh, I'm going out on my own terms here, but when the Doctor's like, oh no, you have to leave, she's like, oh, but that's not how I thought this was happening, you know. And then it's all emotional, it's all sad, and I just think both the characters play it very well, both the actors play it very well. I do think that the Doctor was a little bit kind of, I don't know, wasn't quite as nice as I thought with saying goodbye to Sarah, you know. I mean, he kind of just says goodbye, and then she like says a few nice words to him, and then he kind of just, he's like, yep, goodbye, get out of here. Like, I don't know, he's got a smile on his face, he seems genuine, but he does seem a little bit like, just get out of here, I've got things to do, which I'm a little bit iffy about, but other than that, yeah, I think it's a nice enough exit for Sarah Jane. Alright, so on to the bad. There are a couple of things to talk about here. Firstly, trying to blow up a nuclear generator can't be a good thing, surely. You know, they try and blow up the nuclear generator because Eldrad's inside, they want to blow her up because, you know, she's been killing people. She doesn't seem like she's a good person. So they're going to blow her up. But, I mean, I think the Doctor had a feeling that the missiles weren't going to work. But even then, just I just don't think that trying to blow up a nuclear generator, if it did work, because I mean, the actual guy that ordered it, he didn't know that this wasn't going to work. You know, I think the Doctor had an idea, but the manager of the power plant, he didn't have any idea. Surely blowing up a nuclear power plant can't be healthy for anyone of that area. You mean, you blow that up, that's a complete area that, well, that's gone. You know, it's like Chernobyl blowing up. I don't know, it might not be quite that big, but it just seemed a bit strange to me, you know, blowing up a nuclear generator. And then the only other thing was Eldrad gets a bit over the top. You know, once we get onto his planet and he turns into the male version, he goes a little bit over the top, and ultimately that whole kind of story thing gets a bit convoluted and a bit, man, I don't really know what's going on. It feels a little bit all over the place, that last episode especially. And yeah, I think Eldrad goes a little bit too over the top. Ultimately, I think his death was a bit meh as well, kind of reminiscent of Morbius's death from the Brain of Morbius, just kind of trips and falls. Little bit meh, not the best way to go, definitely. Yeah. Alright, so a rating for The Hand of Fear. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. It's an okay story. It's only 4 parts long. It's watchable. I think the first 2 episodes are quite interesting. But after that, and mainly the 4th episode, I mean, I know the 4th episode we do get to the other planet. I can't remember what it's called now. Sister Row or something like that. I can't remember. So that's nice, but ultimately, I'm just not particularly, you know, a lot of episode 4, like half of episode 4 is them carrying Eldrad around. The Doctor and Sarah just carrying her around. Then the rest of it, you know, you kind of get the backstory of what actually happened with the planet and with Eldrad and with all that sort of stuff. And I just didn't find it particularly interesting and a little bit convoluted and complicated. So, yeah, a 6 out of 10. It's good, but it's nothing great. So, there we have it. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, link will be in the description down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.